Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can in turn inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. I'm your running host, Dean Thompson. Well, have you ever been tired? I know it's a crazy question, right? We're going to share a story from an old friend who proves that God gives us just what we need when we need it. And then in a story that dovetails with the first one, I'll share why a 5-year-old is more likely to survive a catastrophic situation than a teenager. And I can't wait to dig into it all with my great friend and Run for God founder, Mitchell Hollis.
You know, Dean, you can tell we've been doing this a long time, because I think in the first 6 months we did this, that little stutter you had right there at the beginning, we would have said take 2.
Yeah.
But now we just
keep going.
roll with it.
That's right. Yeah, it's been fun. You think you'd be good in a survival situation?
I think I would.
I think you probably would. You're that guy who's always looking for that little thing to do to make things a little bit better. And,
yeah, you know, I'm the guy that I won't sit with my back to the door in a restaurant. I'm always thinking of, I'm not as far as some of my friends. I've got some friends that they won't even sleep on the second floor in a hotel because fire and things. But I'm always, I think I'm always looking for a way out, a way to, I don't know. Yeah. I might crumble and fail.
Well,
I don't know. Hey, I got a question for you before we get to our sponsor. I had a lunch with a good friend of mine yesterday. He's actually the founder of Partners for Christian Media, Bob LaBelle. You know Bob?
Yep.
And J103, J Radio. And he was telling me about a gentleman, and I want to see if you know this guy's name. The guy's name is John Disterdick. Have you ever heard that name?
I have not.
It's crazy how we find out about people who live in our own back door. This guy is a Hall of Fame boxer. He's a world-class track and field athlete for seniors.
Huh.
He co-founded USA Triathlon. Bob said if he asked me to pull my triathlon card out, I had Lane's card, and he said, "You see that member number?" And Lane was like, "I don't remember what the number was." He said, "John is number 1."
Wow.
His USA Triathlon number is number 1. He's a rower. He's done all these different things. His 80th birthday was a few weeks ago. On his 80th birthday, he did an 8K run, an 8K row, 80K bike, 800-meter swim. He did 80 push-ups, 800 sit-ups, 8 rounds of sparring, and he donated $8,000 to Come On Let's Go, which is one of the Partners for Christian Media ministries.
Wow.
And guess where he lives?
Where?
In Chattanooga.
Really?
Yeah.
Son of a gun.
So I've reached out to this guy. I said, we've got to get this guy on the podcast,
Yeah.
especially being right here in our back door. He's a very outspoken Christian, gives all glory to God if you read up on him. But yeah, I'm surprised you didn't know his name.
Yeah,
especially because you do the Masters track and field stuff.
Yeah,
and there's pictures of, he just has medals after medals after medals for so many days. He's like a Renaissance man when it comes to sports.
Yeah, it sounds like
he's done everything.
800 sit-ups.
80
years old.
80 years old.
That's the one that stuck out to me. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And this was when did you do this? Back in March.
Wow, I'm very impressed.
Yeah, and Bob said he's a great partner for their ministry, he said we need to talk to this guy. So I've reached out to him. Don't know if he'll get back to me or not. I think he will.
Yeah.
We'll go to lunch one day, and I want to meet this guy. I want to talk to this guy.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
we've got a few guys that we want to get on the podcast.
We do. Well, I want to get Bob on here.
Yeah.
Bob, the founder of Partners for Christian Media, incredible guy. Got a great testimony.
Yeah.
Very well spoken. And I need to take a back seat for a few weeks, I think. We need to we need to roll some people in here that's a little more interesting than I am. But I digress.
Well, I don't know if I'd say that.
Okay, so again, if you own a business out there and you want to support the ministry of Run for God and allow us to support what you do, by doing what we're about to do. Send an email to runlanehollis@gmail.com. He'll get you all the information on how you can do just that. But this week's sponsor is Outer Elements. Outer Elements is a Chattanooga-based landscape design company. Established in 2011, Outer Elements is a design-build landscape company servicing the Northwest Georgia and Chattanooga areas, specializing in the latest techniques in landscape architecture and design. Outer Elements has the professional experience to develop a wide range of products in both commercial and residential sectors, from irrigation installation, hardscape construction, planning, and beyond. Outer Elements can help you conceptualize any project and make it a reality. Give them a call today at 678-445-1968 to connect with a professional landscape architect. And these guys are good at what they do. They're very good at what they do. Another division of their business is actually about to start working on one of our jobs right now, and just a great group of guys, and we can't do what we do without their support. So thank you to all the guys over at Outer Elements.
Outer Elements. That's a cool name for that company.
They're actually a paving company. Northwest Georgia Paving is kind of the parent company, and they created Outer Elements several years back to help with, because landscaping in behind curbs and fresh asphalt is kind of a thing. So yeah,
makes sense. They go together well.
It does.
Wow. Well, how about this Facebook post from last week? Justin Schmidt put this one up, and if you're on the Facebook page, you probably know Justin. And this is what it says. Ecclesiastes 5:4 says, "You probably make a lot of promises. Think back over the last few days. You may have promised to run an errand for your spouse, to meet a deadline for your boss, or to help a child with a project. Maybe you promised yourself you'd start a new healthy habit. You may have even made a promise to God. When you make a promise to God, you should be quick to keep it. Just like delayed obedience is disobedience, a delayed promise is an unfilled promise." Ecclesiastes 5:4 says it clearly. When you make a promise to God, keep it as quickly as possible. When you start following Jesus, you probably promised him that you'd start living a life according to his plan, not your own. And to keep that promise to God, there's another time you need to respond quickly. When you're tempted, you need to be quick to run away from temptation. Temptation requires that you have both preventive and emergency tactics. Preventative tactics mean that you work to keep yourself out of tempting situations. But today, let's focus on emergency tactics. What to do when you're being tempted. The Bible clearly says what to do with temptation. Run from all these evil things. That's 1 Timothy 6:11. When you feel tempted to do something self-defeating or dishonoring to God, you should move out of the situation rapidly. In other words, you should run. What should you not do? Don't argue with temptation. Don't fight it. Why? Because you're going to lose. If you're watching something on television that tempts you to lust, change the channel. If you struggle with alcohol, run far away from the bar. One specific temptation the Bible tells you to run from is the worship of idols. Flee from the worship of idols. That's 1 Corinthians 10:14. Wait a minute, you might say. I don't have idols in my house. But anything you put before God is an idol. In some cultures, people have idols that look like stone or wooden figures. But in the U.S., we're more likely to carry our idols in our wallets, watch them on TV, or park them in our driveways. So here's another way you might think about it. What person or thing do you idolize? Success? Beauty? A favorite athlete or sport? A certain celebrity? Social media? No matter what your idols are, no matter what your temptations are, the strategy is clear. Run away. Don't argue. Don't fight. Just run. If you don't want to get stung by the bees, get away from the hive. Remember, following through on your promises matters. So when you've made a promise to God, be quick about keeping it. I need to follow through on running because I let other things get in my way.
That's a good word, Justin. You know, just last night, I've talked about on here many times that I'm a small group leader for our high school guys at our church. And last night was kind of our first night back in our regular routine. And so after the sermon, we split into small groups and I had the guys. And I do this every year, but we kind of got a new crop of guys this year, some new faces. So I kind of set them up for what I used to always do. And I said, I asked them, I said, who in here has a problem with reading their Bible every day like they should. And of course, every hand goes up, including mine. Mm-hmm. And I said, what's the number one reason for that? And they said, time. We just don't have time. So I started going through their day, and I said, you sleep, let's say 8 hours. You're at school for 8 hours. And they started talking about football practices and cross-country practices and all the different things that they do throughout their day. And it sounds like it just filled up. And I said, all right. And this is where I go back to what I always used to do. I said, take your phones out. Mm-hmm. And they took them out, and I said, go to your screen time. Now, some people may say that this is me stepping over the line because this is kind of private.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I said, go to your screen time. And I said, we're going to call our screen times out aloud for everybody to hear. Because that's one good thing about Apple phones nowadays is you can go to your screen time and see what your daily average is.
Yeah.
And we started hearing 5 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours, 4 hours. This is daily average that the screen is on their phones. And it's so funny to watch these guys. They're like, they don't believe it.
Yeah.
They're like, there's no way. Yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah, there is a way. And I said, imagine if you drop that back to just 2. The guy that's 6 hours. I said, that's 28 hours a week that you're on the phone.
Yeah.
That you could be reading your Bible. You could be getting exercise. You could be doing all those things. And so to Justin's point, and I told them this last night, I'm firmly convinced that the number one idol in Americans' lives today is our phone.
I agree with you.
I don't know if there's a study out there that says that, but anything that we look at, worship for 4, 5, 6 hours a day, that's got to be up there as the number one idol. So I encourage everyone out there. I fell at this too. I've talked on here before about deleting apps, putting them back on, deleting apps. But look at your screen time every now and then, because it will convict your heart. It does mine every time I pull it up.
Well, and I get that reminder every Sunday.
Yeah.
It tells me what it was for the last week.
You can set it up to remind you.
Mine. Well, here's what the thing is about my screen time, though. And this is what we do with everything, right? We justify everything.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I listen to podcasts. Now, I'm listening to podcasts when I'm driving. And, I'm going to and from practices every day. So there's a fair amount of travel time.
But the screen's not on for that.
But apparently it counts it, because I really don't spend much time actually with my face in my phone flipping through stuff. You know me. I'm hardly ever.
You can look at what it is.
Yes.
You can look down at what it is. Because I had a girl tell me last night, and I'm not going to say her name. She said, well, I do my Bible studies on my app, on my phone. I said, drill down in your screen time then. Let's see how much the Bible is up. And
it's not. Yeah.
TikTok was number one.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, my goal is just to try to get these kids to think about it. Just think about it.
It is good. And we do spend a ton of time, especially kids. Yeah. And if you're into social media at all, you spend more time on there than you think you do.
And I'll say the rock star in the room for the past 2 years, ever since he's been in my high school class, has been my son Landon.
Yeah.
I think it was 56 minutes.
Wow.
He's never over and out. We have a limit in our house for phone. If I'm paying for the phone, screen time doesn't go over 2 hours.
Yeah.
And he's always half that. I mean, Lane's the one that's just like 1 hour and 59 minutes and 40 seconds. He's always keeping it just under that. But Landon, well, I mean, Landon.
Yeah.
He's not.
He just stays busy with other stuff.
He does.
He does.
Anyway,
that's good.
To everybody out there, I challenge you. Pull that screen time up and see if you can get it below 2 hours.
Yeah.
I found that 2 hours is, it's enough to get stuff done.
Yeah.
But it's keeping you below that just aimless scrolling.
Yeah.
You're not going to be doing that if you're keeping it under 2 hours. So, yeah.
That's good stuff. Well, you know what I struggle with, and I know people are going to think this is crazy probably because I'm that runner guy and I get out there and I run every day. And so my big thing is just complacency and it's weird because I don't spend a ton of time on my phone, but you know what I do spend time on is this thing.
Yeah.
I spend a ton of time on it. Now, I don't want to measure my screen time on my computer because it's in my face all the time. And I'm constantly scrolling through articles, and I can tell you what's on the front page of Let's Run right now. Everything that's on there. But that's my thing. So, but I was listening to something, and they talked about TikTok. You mentioned TikTok, and that being somebody's number one. You know that TikTok is, well, all social media, but TikTok has really perfected it because they're short videos. It works exactly like drugs do. Exactly like drugs.
Yeah.
That as you scroll through, it figures out what you really like, and it gives you more of that thing. Because there's millions and millions of videos out there, and it can go out there and harvest those things and bring you exactly what you like
in less than a second.
Yes, and then you just keep scrolling because you like, you like 3 out of 4 of the ones that pop up. You like them, so you keep going, and it's really bad for us. And all of this it goes to that broader point here where Justin is saying, if you've accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you've made promises, and those promises don't include Let's Run or TikTok, right? Those promises, our priority when we said, yes, Lord, you're my Lord and Savior, is that He's number one.
Yeah.
And although, is it fair to say, well, the time you spend with God should always be more than the time you spend on TikTok? Well, not necessarily, right? That's not what we're saying. We're not saying
it's a good place to start.
Yes, we're not saying you should measure your, but it is good because when I was in college, you know what I used to do when I was in college is I had every semester I wrote out a calendar for that 12 weeks and 10 weeks I think it was back then, and I wrote in every single day. I wrote in the number of miles I ran, the number of hours I studied, and the chapters in the Bible I read. And I wrote that on there. So I could go back and I could look at what I did. And it's funny how when you measure something, you do more of it.
Well, and it's just the act of, like I tell the guys last night, just thinking about it.
Yes.
Because the phones nowadays, whether it's TikTok or whatever it is catching our attention on it, they don't want you even thinking about it.
Yep.
TikTok doesn't want you to think about what to watch next. They're just going to put it right there for you.
Right.
And, just like the scriptures say here, run from temptation. It's a pretty drastic measure. I think about, when the movie, was it Fireproof? Kirk Cameron, he had a problem with pornography.
Yeah.
And it shows him taking his whole computer out and putting it in the garbage can. I'll never forget the next door neighbor watching him. I don't know if you remember, he was like, what are you doing? Throwing your computer away. But yeah, I mean, we do need to do that. I mean, I do little things like just delete the app from my phone.
Right.
But, there's some people that you may need to get rid of your phone.
Yeah.
And especially our young people today. I mean, that's just why I really park there. They call me the old man, old fashioned. I don't care.
Yeah.
These things are doing some damage to our young people nowadays. And that's not a conspiracy thing. It's just true. I mean, we had kids on our team a few years back that were having 7 hours a day, 7 hours, and that's just not good.
Well, and what worries me more than what we see today is what's on the horizon with virtual reality and artificial intelligence. When those two things come together, the problem is going to be multiplied times 10.
I won't put a set on.
I think that's
even if it's for something good. Because I think I would like it.
Yeah. I
don't even want to try it.
I never have tried it, but after hearing you say that, it makes me think that's probably a really good move is to never try it.
It's not saying that I wouldn't like it.
Right.
I'm afraid I would like
exactly.
it. So I don't want to.
Well, that's why I don't play video games.
Yeah.
Because when I remember I used to work night shift, 12-hour night shift, okay? And I would come home from night shift and I would play my Nintendo for hours. And then by the time I got to sleep and then got back up to go back in the following night, it was terrible. I was getting no sleep, and I saw what it did, and I'm like, not going back there.
Yeah.
I won't do it.
Well, we did have that dead horse.
Yeah. We had a trivia question for last week. This one was pretty simple. So most people have heard the term pronate. It's what our foot does when we run. The arch collapses to a different degree in everyone. And the question was, is pronation a good thing or a bad thing? Should we be trying to eliminate it? And I hear people say this all the time. I hear people say, well, I'm a pronator. Well, yeah. we're all pronators. The actual truth is that we all pronate. We just do it to different degrees. And some people are over pronators.
You remember the video, our shoe video with Mike Buckaloo? He says kind of the same thing. He says people will come up and say, I'm a pronator. Yeah. And he says, yes, you are. Celebrate it. We all are.
Say it loud.
It's just we need to understand it.
That's right. That's right. And so it's just what pronation does is it helps absorb the shock on your body. So it's a good thing. Yeah. And so you don't want to eliminate it, but you do want to control it. Right. And so that's what shoes do. Is somebody who is an overpronator, it tries to keep them in a neutral position so that they don't go too far. Because when you go too far, anytime you get more of a range of motion in any kind of a joint or muscle, it causes some problems and potential for injury. And so we don't want to eliminate it, and we do want to understand it. That's why running shoes are individualistic, is because everybody is a little bit different. And that's why one running shoe that feels great for one person doesn't feel good for another person. One running shoe that's really good for one person is not good for another person. And it's really important that you get that right. And you don't want a person who has who pronates very little, for example, to wear an anti-pronation shoe, right? Because that's going to make their problem worse. And so, it's funny how God made our feet to work this way.
And most good running stores out there, they can help you with this. I mean, you could get somebody to take a video of you walking or jogging, but most running stores, they can help you with this because, to your point, this is why we always say don't ask somebody what shoe they wear to determine what shoe you should wear, because everybody's so different. And probably the biggest difference in shoes address pronation. Yeah. Whether you're neutral, whether you're an overpronator, or whether you're supinator. So, that's why it's important to find a good local running store in your area that can help you determine which shoe's best for you.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I just think it's cool that God made our bodies to work that way. And I do know one person who has almost no pronation, and you know her too. You know who it is, right?
Rebecca? Yeah. Well, her heel never hits the ground.
Never touches the ground.
I don't know if she actually does pronate.
Yeah.
Her heel is the only thing that hits.
Her heel does not. Well, she lands way on the side of her foot, though. That's why she can turn an ankle really easy, because she's already on the edge every single time.
Yeah, I think it was her. She posted a picture. Did you see this the other day? There's some new shoe out now that keeps your heel off the ground. And she was talking about how cool they were. I said, that's the last thing you need. Yeah. Because I took a video when she was probably 10 on a treadmill of her at her feet level, and her heel never touches the ground when she runs. I don't know if that may have changed now. I think you worked with her on her form some, but.
Well, you know what happened? We worked with her on her form, and she changed, and then she got hurt. Yeah. And so we're like, okay, I'm not going to mess with her anymore. Yeah. And the thing about the way that she runs is she's absolutely gorgeous when she runs. Yeah. I mean, she's beautiful to watch, especially when she's running fast. Oh, she's it's like watching poetry when she runs. But because it is closer to most people land so heavy on their heel that it's. I know maybe.
But she's had quite a few injuries through the years.
She has.
I think that's
part
of the reason.
She's not getting enough shock absorption in her body because of that. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, the new website is up and going.
For a week, it's been live now. Yep. As of this recording, it is releasing in about 4 days. And we've had a few people in there testing it out, helping us break it. We're coming back behind them and fixing it. And so if you're not on the new runforgod.com, go to runforgod.com right now. Check it out. It's incredible. We've got Run Club Social on there now. Just so you know, if you're listening to this, we've put the notifications out there that Run Club Social is taking the place of the Run Club Facebook group. So we're going to kind of have a countdown. We are going to phase the Run Club Facebook group out by the end of the year. So we're going to need everybody to come over to the new website. We've got the app. It works, looks, feels just like Facebook. Yeah. But we've got so many people who have never got to experience this club effectively because they're not on social media. And we get it. Yeah. We do. Now, we've had some people a little bit concerned as to why we're doing that. And there's a lot of reasons. Mm-hmm. But the biggest one is, honestly, When Facebook took our Instagram account down for no apparent reason, we still don't have a good reason for it. That kind of gave us a wake-up call that we needed to provide a platform that's safe, is private, and it's off of Facebook. Now, we've had a lot of people question us and say, are you guys not going to have any presence on social media? Yes, we are. Our national pages are going to remain on Facebook. We'll still do advertising. We'll still do the motivational post, everything. The only thing that's coming off of social media or off of Facebook is the Run Club private group. Yeah. So yeah, we still, if you have a presence on social media, we still want you doing that, and because that is a great catalyst to get the word out about what Christ has done in your life. And if Run for God's a part of that story, then by all means, we want you to stay on there and continue to share that. But it's just we just feel like it's a more appropriate fit for this group. Yeah, and so you can set up the notifications and all the stuff just like Facebook. So we're still in the first week right now as when this thing airs, and so we're still probably working some kinks out. I'm sure we are. We're prepared for that, but it's going to be incredible. It is incredible. It
is, and I've gotten some messages from some people who are really appreciative, who are not on social media and are like they're really excited about being able to be a part of,
because they've heard about everything that goes on, but for whatever reason, and like I said, I get the reasons.
Hey, kudos to them. This what we just talked about with Justin's post, and the whole fleeing from it. And the whole thing where I was talking about staying away from. I don't have a problem. Social media doesn't. I'm not that big I'm not a social media guy, so it doesn't bother me. But for a lot of people,
it does.
For a lot of people, yeah. And if you think it might be, then it's a good idea. So, yeah, I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, go check it out. runforgod.com.
As a mom, I want to make sure we choose a cereal that's not entirely derived from sugar. Their car seats have to be nationally CPS certified, and their first car has to have every possible safety feature known to man. I just want to do my best to make sure that they're safe. One thing I don't have to worry about is the content they hear on J Radio. Not only do they love the music, but I know it's only going to be a positive message that I would approve of. Now, if I could just figure out how to get my youngest from sticking everything up his nose.
Sign up at jradio.com and download the new J Radio app in your app store.
All right, well, we're back, and we're going to share somebody's story here, and we want to hear your story. We're about to get thin on stories again, and so we want to make sure that people are sharing their story. So if you haven't shared yours yet, but you've thought about it, and you've thought, I really need to share my story, well, now's the time to do it. Get it on in there.
And with the new website, I mean, literally, all you have to do is go to the website and click on the tab that says share your story. Man. We keep it pretty simple. Yeah. We even give you the guidelines and the word count that we need, and we provide all the little blanks, and it's very easy. And like we always say, you might think you don't have a story. You might think your story's vanilla, but it's a God story, and we need to hear it. Everybody listening to this needs to hear it.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, hey, the guy that I talked about a kid here not too long ago who he's a middle schooler, kind of a troubled past. Mm-hmm. Did you see how he did the other day?
He's doing good, yeah. He would have been on varsity if he'd been in high school.
Yes. Yeah. And he was so pumped about it. I mean, he was just jacked up. It was awesome to see this kid who 2 months ago was constantly in trouble. Mm-hmm. I mean, to the point where police officers are at his house. Okay, so that's severe. And now the kid has gotten saved. Wow. He's going to church every week. He's running. He's doing really well. He has found an identity that he loves.
Yeah.
And
I heard him talking to you the other day. He was pumped.
Yes.
When he got through with that run. So, because I mean, for a middle schooler to come out there and run with the high schoolers. Not only run with the high schoolers, beat a lot of them. Yeah. And then if he were in high school, he would have a spot on the varsity team as of right now. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
It really is.
And you know what he asked me? He said, do you think I'll make varsity in middle school?
I think I did hear him say that.
I'm like, you just made varsity in a high school,
Yeah.
Nate. You're gonna make it.
Yeah.
You're gonna be good. All right.
Yeah, I just love to see the kids that get. Litsy's another one. I don't know if you've talked to Litsy much.
Oh, she's a joy.
But I talked to Litsy on Saturday. I was there for the long run, and she come in and she had done 4, which most of the kids were doing like 6, 8, 10, whatever. And so I was talking to her, and she said, I just love running.
Yeah.
And I said, really? I said, how long have you been doing it? She said, 5 days. I said, wait, you just, like 5 days you've been back at it? Or she said, no, 5 days. That's all I've run.
Yep.
I said, you just ran 4 miles after 5 days. Number one, we don't, that is not wise to most everybody listening to this. But I mean, she probably weighs 85 pounds, high schooler. But she ran 4 miles, and she just said, I love it. She said, this team is so encouraging. She just went on and said she just loves running. So I think there is a lot of room for improvement. She made varsity as well.
Yep.
And there's a lot of room for improvement there with her. And she enjoys it, which is the big thing. You know, we've had some conversations about some of the kids out there that they just don't enjoy it. Like, they're out there because their parents are making them be out there, or just for the friends, which is okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay. But she really enjoys it. So I'm excited to see what comes out of her throughout the season. She could be another Kennedy.
That's exactly it. I think she is.
For everybody listening, Kennedy's a young lady that, you know, she
ran like 36 minutes her first 5K.
And then the end of last year, won region.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just out of nowhere, really.
Yep.
So yeah, I love this time of year. I'm not one of the coaches there, but I love to come and hang out. I'm the cheerleader. I'm the guy yelling and screaming, and
they appreciate it too. Yep. Well, do you get enough sleep? You think most of the time?
Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah.
Maybe not this morning. I didn't, because we're at this early this morning.
Yeah. Well, sleep is a weird thing because everybody claims they're tired all the time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I talk to our team all the time and ask them how they're feeling, and it never fails. Every single time I ask, at least one is going to say, I'm just tired.
But isn't that just a default answer?
I think it is. That's my point. I think a lot of times it is the point. It is a default, and I think the tiredness is more perceived than it is real. I'm guilty too. Yeah. There's times where I'm like, I'm just so tired. I'll be out in the middle of a run. I'll think, I'm so tired, and then it'll hit me like, you're not. You're fine. Quit whining. Just keep going. Yeah, I think it becomes automatic, and I think there's a portion of people out there who I think would feel less tired if they could just get their brain wrapped around the fact that they're less tired. I mean, I think the difference is the 6 inches between your ears.
Well, how many times have we all, we're supposed to be doing a run in 2 hours and we're thinking, I'm just too tired. But you force yourself to do it, and it comes out to be one of the greatest runs of the week.
Yeah.
When you were supposedly too tired.
Yeah.
And I think it's mental. For sure.
What if those people? We all know those people who have tons of energy, like all sorts of energy, right? Yeah. And what if the only difference between the people who have tons of energy and the people who think they're tired all the time is really just a mindset? That's very possible.
Well, I think if you study those Enneagrams that we talked about a few weeks ago, that's the case. Yeah. There are some people who are just naturally full of it. It's not that they're full of energy. The energy comes out of them and they feed off that. And then some, I've said it on here before, some people, their spirit animal is Eeyore.
That's true.
And it's all in our head. It really is.
It's funny how, like, let's say you're a fisherman and you're going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go fishing. You never have a problem getting up for that.
Every day, or going hunting, or
But your wedding day. Did you have a problem getting up on your wedding day? Were you tired? Probably not. You probably got right up and was excited to attack the day. Well, what if we just looked at the idea that we get to serve God every day the same way? Wouldn't it be incredible? Man, what a change that would be. Well, talk about energy levels. This story this week is kind of about having enough energy. And it comes from Sam Ridenauer, who we all know up there in Ohio.
Sam has been around almost from the beginning, if I remember correctly.
He has.
He's a Great guy.
He is. And this one's called Just Enough. Have you ever gone into a race or a big life event with the expectation of proclaiming afterwards, I came, I saw, I conquered, yet found yourself instead saying, I arrived, I strived, I survived, much more quietly than you had originally thought? I've had a few experiences in these past couple of months that have been quite challenging, yet God showed up every time and provided just enough to let me keep smiling, knowing He had been faithful and true. Last fall, my wife Kathy signed me up for this year's Hall of Fame marathon in Canton, Ohio. I was not yet in marathon shape as I was beginning to build up towards a planned 200-miler in August. More on that later. Race day was going to be a warm one, temps in the mid to upper 80s with high humidity, not normal Ohio weather in April. We knew this weather report going in, as well as the spacing of the water stations being every 2 or so miles. That is not enough for this heavy sweater. So we loaded up my hydration vest, and as she planned to meet me at around miles 13 and 22 and a half. Even with all that planning and running the first quarter of the race with some Run for God friends, I started to fall off my original pace at mile 7 and wound up hardly being able to run the last 4 miles of that race. The mere act of walking was pegging my heart rate at more than aerobic effort. But after meeting Kathy that last time, God answered some pre-race prayers, and I finished that marathon smiling all the way to the finish line. The very next week, I wound up running the Flying Pig Marathon in Cincinnati. This was the result of a good friend having a busy season of life, and she had gifted me her registration. I had to run this race for her. The Flying Pig has meant a lot to her throughout the years, but I had to run this one solo since Kathy had decided to sit this one out. This race started with much better weather, cool and rainy at the start. I felt surprisingly okay despite the tired legs and was able to keep a consistent pace. But anyone who has run the Flying Pig will tell you the weather will almost certainly turn hot and lousy at some point. Sure enough, the clouds broke at around mile 20 and it got soupy in a hurry. My body again slowed down, but my spirit again picked up. Some kids were throwing footballs to the runners at around mile 22. For some reason, I decided to punt the one thrown my way. It was actually a decent kick with good hang time, and one of the other guys there caught the punt in a laundry basket without plowing into another participant. The ensuing celebration is a race moment I will not forget. I had worn my Run for God shirt that day. Only one person commented about the shirt the entire race, but more than one person remarked that I was still smiling during the last 10K of the race. I finished the race 28 minutes faster than the previous week and had just enough energy to make the 2+ hour drive home afterwards. Then, the next week, I had a major life event happen. My parents, who had been living in West Texas for the previous 16 years, well, they were moving home. Why they lived so far away is a long story and not really a happy one, but ready or not, here it came. They were flying back to Central Ohio that Tuesday after the Flying Pig, and I was to fly down to Texas later that week to drive their vehicle back to Ohio. But as is typical with such moves, the plans changed often. My parents were unable to fly their dog home, so my mother was going to fly with me, and I was going to make the cross-country trek with both her and a crazy dog riding along. I drove 6 hours in the first day before stopping for a broken night of sleep in a strange hotel with a strange dog and my mother, who I had rarely seen all these years. During one of those times of being awake, I felt my forearms tingling. Okay, that's weird. Now, my favorite superhero has always been Wolverine. When I would get pumped up before races or other times where it was time to get to the adrenaline pumping, I would often imagine something like Wolverine's claws coming from my forearms and wrists and thinking, it's go time. But as my forearms were tingling, I felt God's presence and in his way would only mean anything to me. He was telling me that I wouldn't need these imagined claws today. Wouldn't you know, his message was true. Even though my mother had said she would help with the driving, I knew how that story would play out. Her spirit was willing, but the body was weak. I was able to make the 19-hour drive all the way from Central Oklahoma to Central Ohio to my brother's house, and I did not get tired until I was less than 5 miles away from my house. God again provided just enough. The very next day, the movers who were supposed to arrive before we flew to Texas showed up. Once again, God provided just enough for me to do what was needed in the moment. Sometimes I was helping move heavy furniture. Sometimes I was making decisions about where things needed to go. Not one of my strong suits, by the way. Sometimes I was being a counselor for my family. Once again, I had to walk around the block with my dad and his dog. Again, it was just enough strength to make it. That was just 3 weeks of my life this spring. I could keep going on with these stories, but inside and outside of running. Like he provided manna for the Israelites in the wilderness, these past couple of months have felt like he was providing manna to me in the forms of strength and peace. In particular, the month of May has been the month where I have broken more than once under the stressors of life. This might have been the toughest May I've ever gone through, but God, he was enough and continues to be enough. The 200-mile race was canceled, yet within a couple of days, we were able to find both a 100-mile replacement race and a training plan whose schedule coincided with my fitness and will keep pushing me out of my comfort zone. The situation with my parents continues to be stressful, but God has provided moments which have been genuinely good and whose experiences I will always treasure. Joy unspeakable that won't go away and just enough strength to live for today. So I never have to worry what tomorrow will bring because my faith is on solid rock. I am counting on God. That's from I'm Counting on God from the Desperation Band.
It's a great story, Sam. You know, I think Sam is one of those, I'm pretty sure he got his start in running through Run for God. I could be wrong about that. But he's one of those crazy guys that has taken it to, he runs across countries.
Haiti. Yep.
Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
He loves doing these ultra long distance. I mean, 200 miles. I mean,
yeah.
Good gravy.
Yeah.
And that one gets canceled. So I'll find a 100-miler, you know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Sam is a funny, interesting guy. I've got to meet him a few times. And, talk about full of energy.
Yes.
He's always upbeat, full of energy. And
that's the thing I remember about Sam is I remember the smile. You know, he's always in a good mood, no matter what. And, a lot of times I think we go through life and we wonder if people notice things like that. And people do, even if they don't say it. I don't think I've ever told Sam, hey, man, I just love the way you're always positive and upbeat. But I do, right? And so a lot of those personality things, and, I try to be positive and upbeat most of the time, although I have my moments.
Yeah.
I always tell the girls on the cross country team, I tell them that I'm going to be your biggest fan and your biggest critic. And I like to live up to both of those. So I'm going to let them know when things aren't going well, but I'm also going to be the first one to go, hey, what a great job you did.
Yeah, I think one thing I love about you, because I was listening to you the other day with the cross country team, and you were basically I leaned over to Coley, who's one of the coaches, and he's a teacher. I said, this is why Dean and I are not teachers, because we would never make it. Because you were just being matter of fact, saying, I love you guys. I'm going to be your worst critic, your hardest critic. And if I'm on you, that means I care for you. That means I think you have potential, and I think you've got more to give. What you need to worry about is when I stop getting on you. And you said something, I forget how you said it, but you said something, and the kids were like, whoa. And that's when I leaned over to Coley and was like, that's why we're not teachers. We couldn't get away with that in a classroom. But you were just giving hard, loving honesty to these kids, which so many of them don't get nowadays.
Yeah, it's true.
And I think sometimes my wife, she's told me several times through the year, you can't talk to other people's kids like that. I said, I'll talk to them just like I talk to my kids.
Yeah.
And but sometimes that maybe it's out of line, but we love them. I mean, that's the reason we stay on them so hard, because we want the best for them, and we want to see these success stories when they get older. And it is rewarding, because we've both had people come back to us and say, thanks.
Yeah.
Some of the ones I can think back, I was very hard on.
Yeah.
But they see it later. They don't see it right then.
No. Yeah. And that's what you hope, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I often think about, the president. I've probably mentioned it. I'm sure I've mentioned it on this podcast a few times. And people say they don't have time. Well, we've had presidents of the United States who run. Well, if they've got time to run, then anybody has time to run, because I can't imagine there's a job any busier than the president of the United States, right? And so we also see with presidents that they usually age about 20 years in the 4 years they're president.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can look at just about every president before they came into office and right after, and it's whew.
What a difference in pictures. Yeah. It's really incredible. But think about it this way, like when the president wakes up in the morning, the president has to think, whoa, I'm president. I got to get, you know what I'm saying? You got to be motivated by, oh my goodness, people are counting on me. I got to get going. Yeah. Well, shouldn't we be the same way? We really should. We should look at whatever our job is, whatever we're doing. Our job is to share Christ. And if every day we got up and
which is just as important as being president.
Way more important.
Yeah.
And so if every day we got up and we thought, like the president wakes up and go, oh, I'm the president. If every day we woke up and we thought, oh, I have to share the gospel today.
Yeah.
Man, imagine how this world would change, right? That's what we need to do. Exodus 16:13-15 says, that evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, what is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, it is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. Just like he's talking about in this story, God provides what we need, and not that doesn't necessarily mean what we want. Very, very often it's what we need. And this strikes me, the whole manna thing strikes me, because in today's world, we hear so many people say, well, I just ate that yesterday. I can't eat that today. As if you can't eat the same thing 2 days in a row, or 2 meals in a row or whatever. Think about eating the same meal for 40 years. But
you know what, and we do this, so I'm going to preface this by saying, I do the exact same thing every day. But you got to look at the children of Israel and the journey that they came out of from Egypt. And you have to wonder, how did they complain? How? They had a pillar of fire. They had a cloud by day. They had quail just coming in and lighting in on their camp every day, basically saying, eat me. They wake up and there's bread on the ground, and yet they complained.
Yeah.
And I say that, and it convicts my heart that we did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in America, I mean, we're in one of the wealthiest nations in the world. I mean, even our low income in this country would be rich in other places.
Yeah.
But yet we complain.
Yeah.
I think it's an entitled mindset that, we deserve more than what we have. Well, no, we don't deserve anything. We all deserve hell.
Yeah.
And this life is a gift. But we like to throw darts at the Israelites. We like to throw stones at them and say, what were y'all thinking? I mean, good gravy. The Red Sea parted. I mean, come on. But we have Red Sea moments all the time. Yeah. And yes, we get pumped when it happens and we feel God moving in our life, but it's like we wake up that next morning and we're like, is that all you're going to give us is bread today, God? I mean, how what's the word I'm looking for? How ungrateful we are sometimes walking through this life.
The interesting thing about the manna is that the manna came it came by God's plan, but there was complaining before it started. So they're complaining, we don't have anything to eat, and now God is just providing it out of thin air. And
literally.
And then you're going to complain that what he gave you wasn't enough. Like, I complained, I got what I wanted, but that's not exactly what I wanted. And now, how often do we do that, right?
How often do we do it in our church? Oh. Well, that's not the music I want to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, oof. We don't need to go down that road. I mean, we get hung up on our preferences.
That's right.
Instead of what God has in store for us so many times.
Yeah.
And we need to stop that.
Yep.
I say that to myself. Stop it.
Yeah.
But we wake up a new day and we do it again.
Yes, we do. John 6:35, then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. I love that straightforwardness of that verse. It's very direct. It's to the point. God said he would provide in the Old Testament, and he did. God said he would provide in the New Testament, and he did. And he still does today. And, you know, back then, bread was kind of the symbol of all food in that day, right? And so the reference was really easy for them to understand back then. And it was easy for the Israelites to understand, which makes it even more incredible that they didn't appreciate what they had. But Jesus, in this verse, I love reading this verse in context, because when you put it in the context of what the people he's talking to, they're all stuck on this, the facts of what he's saying, and not the fact that he's talking about spiritual health.
Right.
And they're trying to take him literally when he's not talking literally. And a lot of times things are really simple. Like, he's being really simple here. What the illustration is not. It's not the food he's talking about. It's the spiritual health that he's talking about. But it's really simple to understand. It's not like there's any mystery here. And yet, the people listening to him are misinterpreting what he's talking about. And that's where we do this all day long.
All the time.
Every day.
The gospel's simple.
Yep.
The reading the Bible really is simple.
Yep.
We complicate this process. And sometimes we just need to move ourselves out of the way and let the simplicity of what God said, the simplicity of what Jesus often said, shine through, and people will get it. But so many times we confuse people because, you know, I don't know why the whole story with George just popped in my head, you know, the whole thing with the race that time. And I wanted eloquent words. You know, so many times we want eloquence, and we confuse things in the process, where if we just keep it simple, you know, maybe it doesn't sound eloquent, but many times that's what people need. It's just a simple truth. I mean, Jesus said, come to me as a child with childlike faith. That's a picture of simplicity. We don't need to have deep, I'm losing my words this morning. We don't need to have deep theology discussions many times. Yeah. We just need to say, Jesus is what you need. Yeah. You know, the simple gospel.
He is enough.
Yeah. Admit you're a sinner. Go back to the ABCs. You know, some people say that the ABCs that's too elementary of a gospel presentation. No, it's not. No. It needs to be elementary.
That's what Billy Graham did.
Exactly.
Yep.
And millions came to the foot of the cross as a result of his simple message. And keep it simple.
Yeah. Romans 5:3-5. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us.
This is the runner's verse.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It is. I mean, think about it. This is where the parallel of faith and endurance happens right here.
Yeah.
These same principles work in either side. But I love this verse.
Yeah, I do too. And the word glory here is saying, when he says glory, he's talking about rejoicing. We should be, and this is the way I thought about it, we should be so enraptured with God, so blessed by him, that not only can we be happy when things are good, but his presence is so powerful in our lives that even when things are bad, as Paul did when he wrote the letter to the Philippians from a prison, and he's rejoicing and so happy about his predicament because he's got God and that's all he needs. And that's the picture of who we should be. And what this verse is saying is that that's all we need is Jesus. And if we've got Jesus, no matter what our circumstances are, good or bad, then Romans 8:28 applies, right?
Yeah, I mean, think about, for all of you listening out there who are on the Couch to Marathon program, I want to ask the question, what keeps you going? What keeps a person going to what may be their first marathon or their 20th marathon? What keeps you going to your marathon training? it's the finish line, right?
Yeah.
It's the goal of whatever you're wanting to do in that final moment for that marathon. That's what pulls you through the hard workouts. And what do you have in the process? You got a plan. We talk about a plan. We talk about there's a lot of plans that can get you there, but you need to pick one and go with it. But you got a plan. Well, our goal as believers is to get to that finish line, to cross that heavenly finish line, putting an illustration. But we want to walk into the doors of heaven feeling like we've done everything we can do. And we also have a plan. Now, the difference in the two illustrations is there's only one plan for the eternal marathon, and it's right here. It's the Word of God.
Yeah.
But the parallels are just spot on. I mean, but we always talk about, we get it with marathon training or 5K training or whatever kind of training you're doing. We understand the connection. We understand that I'm going to suffer today. I'm going to hurt today. I'm going to be in agony today's workout because I know what it's going to do for me at that finish line. Somehow that scenario breaks down when we start thinking about heaven and eternity. But it's exactly the same. We need to have that same mentality that we have when we go into that track and we get amped up like Sam talks about, Wolverine. I'm going to crush this workout. When we see that lost person that we know, golly bum, what if we thought of ourselves as a Wolverine in that case?
Yeah.
I'm going to do everything I can to reach this guy for Christ.
Yeah.
Wow. Think about how different our walk with Christ would be if we just had that same mindset. But so many times we don't. And I don't know why that is, but we've got to stay in the plan every day. It's part of the problem.
Yeah, and we look at it a lot of times, we think it's more complicated than that. I was having a discussion with a young person recently who he had friends who were putting peer pressure on him to do something he shouldn't do. And he told me this, and I said, that's really simple, because all you have to do, it's just 2 letters. N-O, period, no. And he said, you don't understand, Dean, it's not that simple. And I said, yes, look at me. Yes.
No is a complete sentence.
That's right. It is that simple. But we complicate things so much.
Yeah.
And in his mind, it really was complicated. In our mind, going and talking to somebody about Jesus seems to be complicated.
Yeah.
It's not.
No.
It's really simple. How about a question? How did God show up in your life during something tough, but went far better than expected? This doesn't happen that often to me because, I'm an optimist at heart. So it's not often something goes better than expected, because I usually go into things expecting the best.
Yeah.
Even when I don't feel good, I always look back on the times when I didn't feel good and things turned out well, and I just kind of expect that. And it doesn't always turn out that way, but it's my expectation. So I don't know. Of course, I've seen times when you feel really bad in the middle of a marathon. Like I remember this one, it was a Callaway Gardens marathon. It was actually, I had run another marathon 2 weeks before it. And so I was running another marathon, sort of like Sam here, although his was a week apart. Mine was 2 weeks apart. My expectation was that I was going to feel lousy because I still had that last marathon in my legs. And so I thought, well, if I run my absolute best race, maybe I could break 3 hours for the marathon. And so I ran the first half in 1:29:30, just under 3 hour pace. And I felt awful. And I thought, well, so much for that 3 hour marathon thing. And then all of a sudden, it's like God I don't even remember what the song was. I can't believe I can't remember it because it was just so important to me at the time. He put this song, a Christian song, in my head, and it just kept running through my head over and over again. And it just felt soothing to me to hear it. Well, the next thing I knew, I look up and I see the leaders of the race, and they're not far ahead. And I'm thinking, and then that spurs me on. And then, I'm looking for them, and I've got this song running in my head, and all that stuff just kind of carried me through this whole race. And sure enough, I caught the leader at 24.5 miles and wound up winning the race. When halfway through, I thought, man, I'm going to crash and burn. And I actually finished stronger than everybody else in the race did. And I think
There's only one thing that changed.
my mindset.
Your mindset.
That's right.
Have you ever done the Flying Pig Marathon?
I have not.
I've heard of that
Yeah.
for years, but
Yeah.
didn't know if you'd done that one or not.
I haven't done a ton of marathons, and a lot of I've probably run 15 or 16 marathons, and I've run several multiple times, so I haven't run that many different ones. Another question: have you ever had God speak to you in a way in which only you would understand? That's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know if it's the only way. I don't know if God speaks to me in a way that only I would understand. But many times he speaks to me in a way that is the only way I will understand.
Yeah.
And usually that's just bluntness.
Yeah.
I'm a blunt person. Many times I don't take subtleties. Ask my wife. She reminds me of that. I don't pick up on small things many times. Usually it takes a 2x4 to get my attention. And he does that many times because I think he does. He knows that many times that's what it takes is something drastic, loud, a 2x4 to the head, whatever.
But you're really good too. This is the hard part about living in the South, is that that's not the way people typically talk. They're not typically real direct like that. Right. And so you don't get a lot of that kind of feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I have some Jersey in me.
You do.
Even though I've never been to New Jersey.
Yeah, you do.
Maybe it's because I've hung around with you too long. But no, I've always been blunt. You know, sometimes to a fault. Like my wife used to tell me with the triathlon kids, you don't need to talk to them that way. I'm like, yes, I do, because that's the way I understand.
Yeah,
is bluntness.
Yeah.
Don't beat around the bush. Just tell me what you're thinking. And
some do feel that way. I think our cross country team, our ladies, I've got some of them who have told me Rebecca's one of them. Rebecca's told me, yell at me when I'm running. Be firm and she wants to hear me go, get your butt in. She wants to hear me yell at her and be direct with her. I've got other girls, Riley Joe, who's been on this podcast before. Riley, that will not work with her.
That's Lane and Landon.
It's exactly right. Yeah. You have to treat them differently. Yeah. And there are some, you're right, some that need to hear it directly.
Yeah.
And well, I think this question is interesting because this is where Dean's thoughts come from.
Yeah.
All of the stuff that I write, it's literally I'm just out, or I hear a story, or I hear a sermon, and I think running, I think God, and I put those two things together, and it just makes sense in the context of this story. And so that's the way these things come up. It's sort of like manna, but with words.
Yeah, and I love the instances where God will give you that wink after the fact. So many times, like, you're pretty sure this is God working, and then it's like after it's all said and done, he does something that's like, just
obvious.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna take it just a second because I heard this story yesterday, and I loved it. But it was Bob LaBelle, and J103. You've seen the check hanging in the office, but J103, their first radio station was 102.7. And so when they founded J103, the first ever donation check that was written to J103 was like for $50. But if you look at the check number is 1027. Have you seen that hanging in their office?
I've seen the check, but I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's the check number is 1027, which is the radio station. 102.7 is the radio station. Anyway, so that was that. Well, Bob was telling me the story. They also have 103.1. They have the two. They actually have three frequencies around here. But he was telling me about when the 103.1 frequency was a frequency that they leased from somebody who owned it. They owned the tower and I don't know what all goes on with radio, but evidently you own a piece of property, you own a tower, and you own a frequency. And for 103.1, they had a lease for that. And they had a right of first refusal to buy it. So a right of first refusal means if you own it and you ever decide to sell it, you have to give me the first option to buy it at that price that somebody else is offering you.
Yeah.
It's called a right of first refusal. Anyway, so the company, I believe he said it was out of Nashville, approached him. They'd been leasing this tower for years, and the company approached him and said, we have a buyer who wants to buy that tower and that frequency for $800,000. And we're giving you guys the right to buy it for that. Well, Bob was like, we don't have $800,000. You know, we're going to lose that frequency, which by that time was a well-known frequency for J103.
Yeah.
So he had a guy approach him within the next week from Texas. And the guy had heard what was happening, that they may lose their frequency. And this guy had just sold a radio station in Texas. And he was needing to find another one to buy, or else he was going to have to pay taxes on the money. You know, if you can make an exchange in the IRS code of a like-kind property or whatever, and not have to pay capital gains taxes, whatever. And so this guy flew to town, and he said, I'm going to buy it, and I'll let you guys continue the lease. Come to find out, the guy ultimately made the deal with him that upon his death, he was going to leave it to him. Wow. So anyway, so Bob, I think, goes to this closing, and because they're doing the lease and all these different things, but they're so at this closing, he gets one of these God winks, and the guy was doing the tax-free exchange where the guy was selling something and buying something else, so he didn't have to pay the taxes. You've probably heard this said before, but it's IRS code 1031. It's a 1031 exchange, and he was buying 103.1.
Wow. And
he said, I about fell out of my chair.
Yeah.
When I saw that was the mechanism this guy was using to make all this happen. Anyway, I digress. But that was one of those.
That's a great story.
It's one of those God winks that I love to see after the fact, that it's like God saying, I got you.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. It's the parting of the Red Sea. It's the manna from heaven and the pillar of fire. It's all those things that we get those all day, every day, but we got to be looking for them.
Yeah. We don't realize miracles still happen a lot of times, but they absolutely do. Yeah. Last question. What are the ways in which God has given you spiritual manna? Of course, I think I just answered that with the Dean's Thoughts thing.
Yeah.
That's how he does it for me, because very often the Dean's Thoughts stuff, it's fun, and I love to write those. But it's really humbling sometimes to see how God works those things. And it's a lot like the manna thing, because I don't have a plan for what, like, you know, we've got a story for this week, which we'll share here shortly. I don't have a plan for next week, but something's coming.
Sure.
I know it is, and it will. And it's just like the manna. And it's, that's just how God he provides. And it's funny, because I remember when I first did the Dean's Thoughts stuff for the devotions books.
Right.
I struggled. I had times where I had 3 or 4 really good ideas, and I could knock out a few, and then I would go a week and not have any ideas and just be struggling to write a story. That doesn't happen anymore. Mm-hmm. It has gotten to the point now where God he puts these things in my mind when I need them, and not before.
How much of that was because you were trying to do it in Dean's power back then?
I think you're right.
I got a deadline. I got to hit this. But now you kind of like, okay, God, I know Quail's going to be here this evening, and the manna's going to be here in the morning, and I trust that.
That's exactly right.
And I would say they're better as a result.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, think about the Bible here. And, you know, it's hard to think of the Bible as manna, because, you know, to the outside world, they say, well, it's the same words, it's the same chapters, and it's been for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years. But that's not true, because how many times have we talked about on this podcast, we can read one verse today and we can read the same exact verse tomorrow, and it comes across completely different.
Yeah.
And that's hard to understand for people that's never experienced it. But if you read the Bible enough, you will experience that you're reading the same 27 words today that you read yesterday, and it has a completely different meaning. And that's manna.
Yeah.
God knows God knows how that verse needs to hit us today to make an impact on our life. And it's different than how it hit it yesterday, because yesterday the needs were different. Yesterday we needed quail, not manna. So many times he'll give you these words as a different form, but it's the same nourishment.
Yeah.
But it's what we need for that day.
Yep. And if you're struggling with running, if you will get focused on what you really want to do and accomplish, and you want to get through this program or whatever, God will provide the motivation you need if you'll just let it come.
But you gotta take that first step, right?
You do. You gotta
walk out the door.
That's right. You got to get out there and go do it, and then he'll take it from there. Yep.
Do you struggle with motivation to exercise? Are you looking for something that will challenge you and inspire and motivate you? The Run for God Run Club is just what you need to get off the couch and on your way to a fitter, healthier you. Stop trying to get into better shape and do it with the help and inspiration of thousands of others who are going through the same challenges you face. Whether you are participating in the Couch to Marathon Challenge or any of our other challenges, or you're just looking for a daily pick-me-up to get active, join the Run for God Run Club today. You can join for as little as 27 cents a day. So what are you waiting for? Get started today at runforgod.com.
You know, I remember a guy when I was back in the 80s, when I was a young guy. His name was Benji Durden. You ever heard the name Benji Durden? Probably not.
I haven't.
Benji Durden was he was a marathoner. And so the thing that was notable about Benji Durden, of course, he finished second in the Olympic trials in 1980. Of course, the United States didn't go to the Olympics that year, so he didn't get a chance to participate in the Olympics. But the thing that was notable about Benji Durden was that he would train in sweats in the middle of the summer in Atlanta.
Didn't we talk about this last week, or somebody training in sweats last week?
Yeah, you and I talked about it at cross-country practice this week.
Oh, was it Benji that you were talking about?
It was Benji.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew we had just talked about this.
Well, Benji, he lived in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and he trained, and he worked at Phidippides running store there in Atlanta, and he was a really good marathoner, but he did this crazy thing where he trained in sweats, and people in Atlanta, everybody thought he was crazy. Well, fast forward to this past year, and there's a guy named Phil Sessman from Great Britain who's doing the same thing in Great Britain. He's been listen to this. He was taking thermometer pills. You ever heard of thermometer pills? So what it is you take this pill and it measures the temperature on the inside of your body.
You have like an app or something.
Yeah. And so he would, during these hot runs he would go on, he would measure, he would see how his body was reacting to it. He would run once a week on a treadmill in a heat chamber. And he would lose, it was so hot in there, he would lose 7 pounds of water an hour on this treadmill. He also spent time at training at altitude in France. He did everything he possibly could, all for the European Championships in Munich, because it was going to be hot during that race. And he did all of this stuff. And here's the thing that everybody's going to love, especially Patrick. Patrick, if you're out there listening, he claims the thing that kept him going, the thing that gave him all the energy he needed, the thing that helped him recover was chocolate milk. So he swears by chocolate milk. So
I tend to agree with him. I'm a chocolate milk fan for sure.
I can't imagine training in the heat, in the heat of the summer in sweats. I just can't. You know, I run most days without a shirt on because I like to be as cool as I can be.
There's got to be something to it, though. I mean,
you would think. I
mean, that's the reason people go to altitude. It's to put your body through the worst conditions, and altitude is not necessarily worst condition, but on your body it is.
Yeah.
For running at altitude, it's definitely worse. There's got to be something to it.
There has to be.
It's not pleasant, but
yeah. Well, I like to. I wear sweats before a race a lot of times, and I love that feeling of taking those heavy clothes off and feeling really light just before a race. So yeah. Well, it's time for Dean's Thoughts, and that's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. Well, did you know that a 5-year-old stands a better chance in a survival situation than a 14-year-old? We're going to talk about it. It's called Survive Like a 5-Year-Old. Have you ever thought about what you would do if you found yourself in a survival situation? What if you were lost in the Rocky Mountains, for example? What if you were in a plane crash or a boat wreck and you survived? What if you were out for a hike and got lost? They are pretty grim questions, to be sure. But what would you do in one of these circumstances? But what you do in one of these circumstances could be the difference between life and death. There is the story of Mauro Prosperi, who was lost in the Sahara Desert for 9 days after a sandstorm got him off course in the Marathon des Sables. Or how about the story of Aaron Ralston, who cut his arm off in order to survive after being trapped by a boulder while mountain climbing? You may have seen the movie 127 Hours about his ordeal. The story of Jose Salvador Alvarenga, who survived for over a year at sea, is astonishing. And most people have heard of the amazing story of Ernest Shackleton and how his crew survived in the Antarctic waters when their ship was frozen in place and destroyed. All of these stories are nearly unbelievable, but they are nonetheless true stories of survival. Did you know that one of the categories of people who tend to have a high survival rate are very young kids? And one of the lowest survival rates is for older kids and teenagers. Well, why is that? Well, it turns out that the only thing young kids think about is what is in front of them at the moment. If they're cold, they find a way to get warm, for example. But a teenager knows enough that they're terrified at the thought of being stranded. The younger kids are survivors because they worry about what they can control. The teenagers become obsessed with things they can't do anything about. Aaron Ralston tried to wait for someone to rescue him before he amputated his arm. At first, he survived on what food and water he had with him. But when that ran out, he did the only thing he could do to survive. He worried about what he could control, and that was it. I have a theory that elite runners would probably make good survivalists. They worry about what's going on in the moment. Although they may be thinking about the last miles of a long run, they're not letting those thoughts ruin the first part of that run. We could learn a thing or two from elite runners and young survivalists. Running is hard, but we make it so much harder than it needs to be. We have so much knowledge about things that could become a problem that we obsess over things that will probably not happen. And then, when we get done, we make excuses for not completing our task at hand. We say things like, I just didn't drink enough water today. I think I'm dehydrated. Or, I didn't get enough sleep last night, so I tanked my run. While we should definitely avoid these things, we should not let them get in the way. A young girl lost in the woods will think, I feel cold. I need to find a place out of the wind. An adult will think, I hope a bear doesn't eat me. Which of those things is more productive? I'm not suggesting that we should forget what we know, but we shouldn't let the knowledge of those things get in the way of progress. Just because you've heard a story about how people have had trouble while running doesn't mean you're next. Yes, people have died for lack of water in the desert, but it is not going to happen on your 8-mile run. If you're in the early stages of a run and you feel like the last few miles are going to be tough, don't dwell on that. Instead, think about the next mile, then the next. Before you know it, you'll be at the finish line in much better shape than you thought. Matthew 18:2-5 says, He, Jesus, called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. If any of us were lost in the wilderness, we would have a difficult time averting our thoughts from all the terrible things that could happen. You have to be purposeful in how you approach each minute. If you ever read the story of Ernest Shackleton, you know the power of positive thinking and survival. God tells us to have a childlike faith because He wants us to rely on Him each minute of every day. It's much like that 5-year-old mentality when faced in a survival situation. And your running is similar too. Focus on getting through the next week, the next workout, the next mile of your run, instead of worrying about the bear that might eat you. If you can do that, you're sure to have more success. And an interesting byproduct of that is that you'll enjoy it more.
That's a great story, Dan. There's a lot of lessons in that story.
Yeah. Childlike faith is so hard, though, right? You know, children are okay with relying on others because they really almost don't have any choice. But we have a choice, or we think we do. And so we just let all those things class. So many people, worriers, they worry about everything that could happen, right? And it's not productive.
Yeah, I think when you were reading this, I think back to runs I've had in the past. Worry. That's why we tell people not to look ahead in the marathon program. Mm-hmm. But how many times have you been in a run? I know I have. And I don't know how this happens, but I know it does. Your run is going fine. I'm not going to say great, but your run is going fine. And either you start thinking about how hard it is. Well, you start thinking about how hard it is, how much you want to slow down or walk. And before you know it, your heart rate elevates. Mm-hmm. And your breathing increases. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, you're anaerobic and you're forced to stop. Mm-hmm. Now, did your pace dictate that reaction, or did your thoughts dictate that reaction? I submit your thoughts can elevate your heart rate.
100%.
I mean, you see somebody that gets scared. You can look at a heart rate chart and their heart rate elevates. Keep your thoughts captive.
Yeah.
Don't think about those things, because that will it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's exactly right.
Every time you start thinking, this is hard, I might die, whatever it is, your heart rate increases, and before you know it, you are having to stop.
Yep.
But you didn't have to stop when you started thinking those thoughts.
Yeah, it's a lot like survival. The more we know about the dangers potentially that are out there, the less likely we survive.
Exactly.
Right? And that's what happens in running is the more things we read or the more dangers we think that are out there, then the less likely we are to be successful in our running, unless, like you said, in the case of survival, you get those thoughts out of your head and you just think about what you need to think about. The same thing goes for running. Get the thoughts of I'm dehydrated out of your head and just focus on the next mile.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
You know, they say it a lot. Every year when they televise the Ironman World Championships in Hawaii, you know, that's a grueling course. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're riding your bike through lava fields and 100+ degree heat. And they say it every year that many times your fastest, for people that do that race repeatedly, their first one is the fastest. Mm-hmm. Because they don't know the hardships of that race, and the next year they come in fitter and they go slower because they're anticipating, I'm going through the lava fields. You know, this is going to be hard, and therefore it becomes harder than it was the year before, even though they're more fit. So, yeah, I mean it's the mind game.
It is.
We got to control our mind. And
the truth is, you know, you've seen. I don't know if you've seen disaster movies, The Poseidon Adventure, Flight of the Phoenix. These are older movies, but back in the 70s, disaster movies were a big thing. You had Earthquake, and you had Towering Inferno, you had Airport, you had all these movies that were disaster movies, and in every one of them, you had the same theme. There was always all this arguing and fussing. Now, Flight of the Phoenix is a classic. I think that's one of the greatest movies ever made. Jimmy Stewart plays the guy who's kind of the engineer, who kind of calms everybody. I think that's right. He kind of calms everybody down and just focuses on getting everybody organized and focusing on what they can do rather than worrying about starving to death out in the desert. And the Poseidon Adventure, everybody's arguing and fussing, and you get one guy who says, okay, let's think about this clearly. And then everybody just naturally follows that guy. And then there's always a guy in the background going, well, why are you following him? I know the way. It's like, because you're a hothead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this guy's thinking clearly.
Right.
And that's who we need to be. Mm-hmm. We need to be the thinking clearly guy. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that means putting aside those bad things that we know and just trying to move forward. We know we're not going to die if we don't get enough water in a run. And yet we'll let that get in the way and let it freak us out anyway. And we just got to get those things out of our mind.
And you always need to have somebody in your life who is the clear thinking guy when you're not.
Yeah.
You know, you and me both can be the hothead. Well, I see it almost every week with your computer here, and you plug it into that thing over there, and you're like, it's not working. But you've done the same for me. You know, I'm going to pull out of this Ironman because I just don't have time. Well, wait a minute. Let's think about this. I'll never forget the conversation. That's why the accountability of others around us is so important. That's why you need to surround yourself with people who can hold you accountable, because we all we're all susceptible to this. We all have valleys that we go through, whether it's in our life or it's our run.
Yeah.
You know, you sometimes you need that person running with you that's going to kick you in the teeth and say, you know, you big sissy, quit whining and run. We need that in our life as well. So yeah, I like that story, Dean.
Yeah, Lord knows there's been a number of times where, especially with kids, high school kids, and where they're wanting to stop, and I'm like, you're not stopping. Do not stop. Do not. And I'm goading them. You know, it's like, no. And then you get them through to the end of that run.
The guy that come up to get water the other day, I was laughing under my breath. The guy come up to get water. They were doing like, what, a 45-minute run or something. He come up to get water, and he said, I'm thirsty. And you said, on a 45-minute run, you don't need, well, I mean, you just ridiculed them. But that's what he needed.
That's what he needed.
He didn't need a pat on the back for that. And we all need that sometimes. As hard as it is to hear, we all need ridiculed sometimes.
Yeah, we do. At Run for God, we care about more than just your exercise. We care about your relationship with God, and we believe that the music you listen to while you run can help you build your relationship with God. That's why we partner with J Radio. J Radio offers a variety of positive and Christian playlists to listen to while you run. You can find a playlist that I put together on the Run for God station on J Radio. All right, so every week I share a reason why running is so awesome. And this week, that reason is this: competition, right? And that competition sometimes is somebody else. And sometimes it's just you. It's the competition of trying to be a better you than you were last week. And I think that's something, because we all want to improve in a lot of ways, not just running, but other ways. And that helps us with improving in other ways as well. Gives us something to be competitive about and compete at. And that helps us in every facet of our life. I've always said that I have a hard time calling a sport like gymnastics a sport. Not because it's not hard. Gymnastics is crazy hard. I can't do it, for sure.
I'd like to see that.
But it's subjective, right? You have judges that judge how you do. And I know it's a lot more black and white than I'm saying that it is. But it is a little bit subjective. And in running, competition is like, it's very clear. You have a stopwatch, you have a time, you competed against somebody, and you know who crossed the line first. That's
why I've always said this it's the one sport that I would actually coach, because, you know, baseball, football, coaches are having to make decisions on who to put in, and you got the political part of it with parents and all. But with triathlon or running, it's, you know, my kid's not on varsity. Look at the watch. Yeah. It's pretty black and white, which is what I love about it. It's just very objective.
Yeah. Well, some interesting things happened in the world of running this past week. So Kilian Jornet, you know that name?
Nope.
Kilian Jornet is probably maybe one of the he is one of the greatest ultra athletes of all time, mountain runner. He's written several books. I think he wrote one of the books on diet. Eat to Win? Was Kilian Jornet the one that read that? Maybe not. I may be getting him.
No, he didn't write that.
I'm getting him confused with somebody else. It was another trail running guy.
Eat to Run. It was, oh my goodness.
Well, anyway, he was in a race recently, and he was in 4th place.
Scott Urich.
Yeah.
Eat to Run, yeah.
He was in 4th place in this race, and so he's getting down toward the end. And of course, he's used to winning races by a long way. Well, he's getting down toward the end of this race. He starts high-fiving the crowd as he's finishing, and somebody came by and passed him while he was high-fiving.
That's the worst.
Yeah. I mean, it was fourth place. It wasn't a huge. It did cost him $200 in prize money, so not the end of the world. But I think it was more embarrassing than anything else.
It's about like celebrating before you get to the end zone and getting tackled.
Yep. Yeah. And, and some people have this, they argue, that there's this unwritten rule. I saw some message boards where they were arguing about this, and that you don't pass somebody at the end of an ultra in those circumstances.
If the guy's high-fiving the crowd, yes, I'm passing.
Yes, 100%, right? I don't think he did anything wrong, and I would have done the same thing in that circumstance. As a matter of fact, I remember a race where it was a half marathon. It was the first Dalton red carpet half marathon. And I was running and I was trailing a guy with a mile to go. He was about 20 meters ahead of me. So just far enough away that you felt almost connected, but you're about to be done. And it's like, all I could think about was, you never know how he's feeling. Maybe you can get him at the end. Just stay as close as you can. And all of a sudden the guy just stopped and bent over. Looked like he was tying his shoe or grabbing his foot or something. Anyway, I kind of glanced at him and noticed that he didn't look like he was, he didn't look like he was going to die or anything. I ran right by him. I ran to the finish line and I won the race. And I was like, too bad for him. Yeah. Turns out he had an Achilles problem that had been bothering him, and it just really flared up on him in that moment. But I don't buy all this. Like the Alabama-Tennessee, it's a big rivalry. Mm-hmm. And some people will argue about piling up points. Now, if you're Alabama and you're playing Samford, not Sanford, but Samford, there in Alabama, and you're up on them by, 40 points. Yeah, ease up on them. It's a classy thing to do.
Put the second string in.
Yeah. But when you're playing Tennessee, who, is a rivalry, I don't care how many points you put on the board.
Yeah.
And I think you have every right to pot.
Sure.
Now, you have to understand.
Because there's been smack talking going on
absolutely
all the month before.
Yep.
But now there are some cool stories. I don't know if you remember the Brownlee brothers, but
yes, I remember.
Incredible triathletes, world-class triathletes. And one brother was beating the other one. I think it was for the win. And they're both Olympic triathletes. And he was in the lead, and right before the finish line, literally with 50 yards to go, which you see often in triathlons, I think it was Alistair's body just started to shut down. You could see it. He couldn't move his limbs. He was about to hit the ground. His brother rounds the corner, and he puts his arm around his shoulder and basically tows his brother to the finish line and then pushes him across the finish line, and he hits the ground. Yeah. That's sportsmanship.
Yes. I remember seeing that. That's a powerful video.
It is. And it's two brothers, which, there's plenty of smack talking between them. But it's the situation. Yeah. Different situation.
Absolutely.
You come around the corner and some dude's high-fiving everybody like, I've got this. Yeah, blow his doors off.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, here's another crazy thing that happened. This comes out of Canadian Running Magazine. Dean Karnazes, who we've had.
I watched this video last night.
Did you see it? Yeah. So he apparently got attacked by a coyote during a 150-mile race. It was the middle of the night, so it was dark. And this coyote, he shared a video on Instagram right afterwards. And you can see he's stunned, right? He's clearly stunned. Mouth is bleeding. You can see where he fell and hit his face. He says that as the coyotes were there around him, he was poking him with the poles, hitting him with his poles to get him, because he was running with poles, and that they ran away. But it was that's a freaky thing to happen in the middle of a race.
I don't guess I heard that. I heard, because I had a hypothesis, because he said that he got knocked down.
Yeah,
and he used the word attack. I have almost had the same thing happen. Our property down the road here, have you heard this story?
I don't know.
I was coming out of the woods one night. I had been on the back of our property deer hunting, and I was walking out, and it was dark. And I was walking up the road, and all of a sudden I heard something coming through the woods. And usually when you're walking out of the woods at night, it's going away. Yeah. You've spooked something and it's going away. This was coming toward me. And that's not a good feeling.
No.
Because it was
Yeah,
loud.
it's dark.
I mean, it was dark. It was loud. And so I just stopped. I mean, my heart was racing. And literally from me to you, 3 foot, I could have reached out and touched it. A deer jumped out I could have grabbed it, jumped out, and right behind the deer was a coyote.
Yeah.
Neither one of them even knew I was there. But I wonder, because that'll happen, especially at night, and he was running at night.
Mm-hmm.
Wild animals, they'll be chasing something, and you're just in their path.
Yeah.
And if I would have took one more step, that coyote would have knocked me down.
Yep.
I had never heard of a coyote attacking somebody.
Yeah, I haven't either.
But he did say he was knocked down, so I wonder if that's...
Yeah. I
really
think the Canadian Running Magazine, I think they may have played it up to be.
Played it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But if you watch his video, he doesn't really sensationalize it. He said, I got knocked down. Luckily, I had some poles with me, and the fall wasn't that bad as it could have been, or something like that. Yeah, I watched that video last night, but yeah, I've come close, but I've never been hit by one.
Well, I've told the story about almost running into a deer myself.
Yeah.
In South Dakota one time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we've probably all seen that video of the cross country runner that gets hit by a deer. The deer jumps out, just knocks him over.
It was a whole cross country race.
Yeah.
It just come right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Took this one kid out. I mean, yeah, it was. But for the rest of his life, what a story he's got.
You're right.
So this one time,
I'm the guy.
I got attacked, and it probably had millions of views now on YouTube.
Oh, you know it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also read a thread from somebody who didn't understand why you'd stop your watch at a red light. Do you stop your
I'm
watch?
not the guy that stops my watch.
You don't.
No.
Yeah. So you're one of the weird ones. I think you're in the minority. I
Really?
think most people do stop their watch. I stop my watch, but I thought about
I don't
this.
get hung up on. Used to, I did.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I don't get hung up on what my pace is. I mean, you ran with me the other day, and I'm like mega slow now. And I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, back in the day, if I was trying to get in a whatever mile run at whatever pace, and I had to stop for some reason, then yeah, I was probably stopping the watch.
Well, I'm not concerned about how fast my pace is as much as I am how accurate it is. Mm-hmm. And so I think this may go back to the days when when I was young, we didn't have GPS watches, and so the way that we figured out how far we ran a lot of times was how long I ran for 1 hour. Okay, that's about 8 miles. So that's how I would figure out how far I ran. So if you stopped, you needed to stop your watch.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that's how you calculated how far you ran. So I think it kind of goes back to that, and some people have continued to do that. And again, like I said, for me, and sometimes I'll forget. Like I'll be in the middle of a run and I'll see somebody that I know and I'll stop and talk to them. And then when I start to run, I go to start my watch back up and I had forgotten to stop it. And so, it just looks like I ran
Or you think you stopped it and you start it back only to realize you actually stopped it when you started.
Done that too.
And you get back to the truck and you're like, I didn't even record the last half of my run.
Yeah. Which
doesn't count then.
That happens. I did have one near recently, though, where I stopped like 150 meters from my home. There's a guy on the corner there, and I stopped and talked to him, and I realized I didn't stop my watch. So I just cleared it out and started all over again. So,
or then you get these people, with Strava Nation nowadays.
Yeah.
You pull like I've done a few times, and you forget to stop it when you're done with your run, and you get home only to realize that 15-minute drive home, you've broken 37 Strava segments, and everybody's yelling at you because you broke their Strava segment in a vehicle. And
whoops.
Running drama. That's a Strava drama. Yeah. I've been the subject of that more than once.
Well, we have a trivia question for this week. Here's the trivia question. There is a tribe of people who use running to get from place to place in the Copper Mountains of Mexico. They were made famous in the book Born to Run. Who are these super athletes? You know the answer to that one?
I know that one.
Yeah. If you know the answer, send it to dean@runforgod.com. And if you're the first person to send us the answer, then we will send you a Run for God tumbler. And you need one of those Run Club tumblers. Sure. If you don't have one of those yet, you need to get one. Yeah. And this is a great way to do it. So
all you got to do is answer a question.
That's easy. Yeah. This is typically, I'll take one word on this one. One word.
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's all it is.
It's not an easy word, though.
No, it's not. That's for sure. All right, our motivational thought of the week. Let's leave you with this. One day, I won't be able to do this. Today is not that day. You know, sometimes we just need to be thankful for what we can do and realize that there are people who can't do what we do. There are people who can't run. They would love to run, but they can't. Yeah,
somebody else, I saw a quote here a while back that was similar to this, and I like the way it was worded. It said, when you're training for running, when you think you're not as good as you should be, think back 1 year ago and how your dream was to be where you are today.
Yeah.
And it's true. That's the whole thing. We've got to look back sometimes, because we get those days where I'm horrible. But look back 1 year and you'll think the person 1 year ago would just love to be where you're at today.
Absolutely.
So it's all perspective.
100%. Yep. All right. Just be thankful for what we have, right?
So runforgod.com, runforgod.com, runforgod.com. Check out the new website. It's awesome. We want everybody listening to be members, and we're going to have a lot of fun going forward on it.
Absolutely. So until next week, may God bless every step of every run and walk. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.